welcome back. 13 away from 8 if you're keeping an eye on the time. Good to be with you. I'm Gareth Edwards. This is the SA Morning. We all know our country, of course, surrounded by thousands of kilometres of coastline. But according to one expert, the country's maritime and national strategy are actually a lot like oil and water. Obviously don't go well together at all. Well, Stellenbosch University professor Francois Vrey says there's an evolving master plan for the country's oceans. But let's find out if that master plan is at all in place and how that actually looks. The professor joining us this morning. Professor Vrey, good morning to you. Thanks for your time on eNCA. So when we talk about this master plan for our country's oceans, what do we mean by that? Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. The master plan really maps out just how much potential the oceans around South Africa holds. And this, of course, must be seen against the very large oceans debate that is unfolding about the potential of using the oceans and simultaneously protecting the oceans. And every country really has a responsibility not only to harness the potential of the oceans, the economic potential in particular, but also to take care of the oceans from the idea of it being an environment, but also from the perspective that we have a rather large element of criminality and threats at the oceans that are evolving and taking place at this very moment. Just as on land, where criminality tries to interfere and penetrate into economic benefits, we have the same at the oceans, and countries must make sure that they have a good strategy to counter this.
Let's talk about that strategy for a moment, Prof. While I do that, may I ask us to perhaps put your camera back on? I think we may have lost your camera somewhere. If you can maybe just hit camera on for me on Zoom, if you don't mind, Prof. We'd like to see you as well. There you are. Thank you. I appreciate it. Let's talk about this criminality. Who is supposed to stop this criminality? Or do we focus on oceanic criminality the way we focus on land criminality?
Liminality is a concept that tells you that what goes wrong on land eventually impacts on the oceans. And dealing with the criminality on the oceans, you see it at different levels. It is from the international level where you have entities such as the United Nations Organization on Drugs and Crime that have a maritime crime program, right down to regional entities, for example, in the Gulf of Guinea, that combine their efforts to deal with criminal threats at sea, right down to national entities like South Africa that must have a security strategy in place in order to tie together the different security agencies to also take care of what is happening at sea, small criminal elements as well as transnational organized crime that really constitute dire threats to your oceans and the oceans economy that's so important to countries and their economies.
Well, when we talk about the economy, we're always focusing on jobs and the economy as far as the country is concerned, Professor. Let's talk about this oceanic economy as well. Where does our national strategy and our coastal strategy and the coastal economy tie in? We say here that it's like oil and water. How far apart are they?
I think at the moment, at the national strategic level, and to have a maritime strategy and a maritime security strategy, I think that is where we see voids that should not be there. Lower down, if we only refer to the master plan that's upcoming, as well as elements like Operation Pakisa, there we see that some very good work has been done to tie this together, but this is really something that needs to be kept together, and it should be underpinned by a good maritime security strategy. So whilst you have this master plan that maps out the potential and what is at stake, and whilst you have some elements of the Operation Pakisa that maps this out in sectors and what is possible and what must be developed, the security underpinnings of making sure that you don't have this criminal, corrupt interventions, especially from crime syndicates, transnational crime, that part is just not in place at the moment. It is upcoming, but it has been upcoming for too long.
Just in the last few seconds I have with you, Prof, as well, who's the person that you would like to speak to about this? Who's the person that makes these decisions? And what would you tell them, just in conclusion?
What we are looking at is you can't speak to one person. The whole basis of security of the oceans is based on cooperation and maritime domain awareness. That is interagency, interdepartmental, and based in international cooperation. So you can't just speak to one person, but what you can do is if you have a high-level body that sits very close to the presidency, that is the body that can make sure that this matter remains on the agenda, gets traction, and makes progress, and is not type of left to its own accord.
Professor, I appreciate your time, and I'm sure we're going to be unpacking this as well, the economy of the seas and this master plan. This is just, excuse the cliche, the tip of the iceberg, if you will. Professor Francois Vrey joining us this morning here on eNCA. Appreciate the good prof's time from Stellenbosch University, also for the Institute for Governance and Leadership in Africa this morning.